Hi everyone! Today, me, my low quality microphone, and my horrendous French accent are going to explain the basis of flights. For this, we're going to need a few things. First, a plane. Thankfully, I've got one right here. But just a plane isn't sufficient to go airborne. Next, we need to study the different forces of flight. There are four of these important forces. First is weight. As any other object, our plane has mass and is going to be attracted down to Earth. To counteract it, an upward force is necessary. This force, brought in by the wings, is lift. If our plane has motors, which it does, we'll also have a forward force named thrust. And finally, since we are moving very fast, air resistance is going to be a thing. This backward force, contracting our thrust, will be known as drag. In this situation, a few interesting things can happen. If weight and lift are equals, the plane will keep a constant altitude. However, if the lift is smaller than the weight, the plane will fall. If it's greater, the plane will rise. In the same ways, if thrust and drag are of equal energy, we'll go at a constant speed. If thrust is greater than drag, we'll accelerate. Inversely, if it's smaller, we'll slow down. Well, now we are flying. That's great and all, but with no way to control the movement of the plane, we're going to end up in a mountain or something. So, how can we control our flight path? Well, with the control surfaces, of course. We'll focus on the primary one, so no spoilers or flaps will be shown here. We need to be able to control the plane around three axes: the longitudinal, the lateral, and the vertical axis. For the lateral axis, elevators need to be installed. They are the one colored in orange here, located on the trailing edge of the horizontal stabilizers. With them, we'll be able to control the pitch of the plane, so to make it go up or down. Then for the longitudinal axis, we'll have to have ailerons in green and at the outer trailing edge of our main wings in our schematics. They'll make the plane roll around itself, allowing us to control the well-named roll of our aircraft. And finally, we'll control the movement around the vertical axis with our rudder at the trailing edge of our vertical stabilizer and colored yellow here. It will make our plane go left or right, controlling our yaw. Finally, before taking off, we need to understand the different phases of our flight. The first step will group everything we need to do before we actually try to fly. The pre-flight checks and the taxi consist in checking that our plane is functioning normally, that it is fueled up and ready to fly, and then moving it at the start of the runway, sometime with the help of a tug. Then the moment where everything starts, the liftoff. Here we will accelerate along the runway until our speed and lift are high enough to fly. At this point, we'll separate from the ground. This marks the next step, the ascent. Here we will try to gain altitude by relying in the force imbalance I was talking about before, where our lift is greater than our weight. We will go on like this until we reach our desired altitude. At that point, we'll start our next phase, the cruise. In it, we'll stabilize the different forces to keep a constant speed and altitude around what we will call the cruising speed and the cruising altitude. Most of the flight will be spent in this phase. Once we are next to our destination, we need to reach back to the ground. This process of losing altitude is called the descent, in which we will create the opposite imbalance than in the ascent by making our lift smaller than our weight. The last step of our flight is the landing. Once we lost enough altitude, we will line up with the runway of our airport of destination, put the landing gears down, and touch down. Our flight is now finished. And that's where my mission ends. Now that you know how a plane flies, I'm sure you'll figure out how to pilot one very soon. Good luck! And if you have to crash, please aim away from my house. I'll be thankful.